Ah, it's been a minute. Wait, one more sip. Ani, bonjour, what's up? It's me, and it's been a damn minute. I promised a drumstick video, and that is what we're here doing today. Finally. If you haven't checked out my previous drum videos, I made a hand drum, and I also showed you how to make a bag for a hand drum. So those will be linked. And today we're gonna make a drumstick. Where is my old drumstick? I'm gonna go, hold on, I'm gonna go find it. So this is my old drumstick. I had absolutely no guidance making this. I made it when I was, I think 15 or 16. So I'm 30 now, almost 31. So this is an old drumstick. And yeah, nobody showed me how to do it. I just did it on my own, and that's why it's kind of whatever. And this leather was just made out of what I had, which I obviously did not have a perfect shape to use for the head. So I just did with it what I could. I'm not going to be beating the new drumstick. And this is because I don't know if this is true for all the different cultures who use hand drums, you know, in the North American hemisphere. But they say if you have a beaded drumstick, then you know a lot of songs. I don't know a lot of songs. On top of that, I'm going for more comfort with my drumstick than I am for prettiness and design. So this actually sits on my wall with my other drum, my old drum, and yeah, it's just, no, it's not perfect, but she's cute. Before we get started, a couple disclaimers. This video is more of a vlog than it is of a tutorial. You can follow it as a tutorial if you would like. I would just suggest maybe watching the video all the way through just to make sure that I didn't make any mistakes before you follow along. There are also other videos on YouTube about making drumsticks. There's more videos about making drumsticks for the big drum than there are for a hand drum, but there are some out there, and I will be linking those in the description as well in case you might find those more helpful. And I think that the people who made those videos are more experienced than I am. So this is us learning together, and you know, whenever I try new projects, even if there's a mistake, it all ends up working out anyway. So let's learn together. You can follow us as a tutorial if you want, but it's more of a vlog. And with that being said, let's get started. Okay, so I always have a list of products that I use in the description box, and there might be some links where I can actually link you to these products. But I'm not going to run through all the materials that I use at the beginning of the video. I'm going to talk about them as the video goes on, as I use these materials. So if you're interested in getting a one-off list of the materials that I used, look in the description box for that. The first thing that I'm using is this big old wooden dowel here. Let's see, what are the dimensions? 1/2 inch is what the dimension is, so fairly thick. There are numerous things that you can use for the stick itself. I'm choosing a wooden stick just because, I don't know, I want to. And this is a little thicker than what I see most people using. I usually see smaller sticks, especially if we're talking like a big drumstick, or a drumstick for a big drum is what I mean. But besides a wooden dowel, you can use any kind of like plastic stick. One person that I seen while I did my research, he actually took one of those plastic reflector things that you put on your driveway, and so you like take the reflector head off and cut it in half, and then you have 2 drumsticks to make. So I don't know, that's really cool. Okay, so grab some measuring tape or a ruler, and then measure out on the dowel or whatever material that you use how long you would like your stick to be. Again, this is a hand drum stick, and I kind of want it to be a little on the small side, so I'm going for 10 inches, and I'm going to mark on the dowel 10 inches. And then I have a razor cutter in like my hardware tools, and I'm going to use that to cut the dowel. There's other ways to do it, you know, if you have any heavier wood cutting machinery or tools, go for that. So yeah, be right back. And I'm back. I have my stick. All right, so the next step is you need to sort of make a base for your handle and or the head. So obviously every stick is going to have a head. You don't have to make a handle if you don't want to, but I am going to make a handle. And the way that I'm going to do it, that I've seen other people do it, is use tape. Most of the people that I researched that made drumsticks, they used a masking tape, and then some people use duct tape. I'm going to use masking tape. One man also suggested that if you want to get sort of the perfect length of your handle or your head, then to get multiple sizes of masking tape. I already have, I believe, a 1 inch. I forgot to dig it out, but I have a 1 inch masking tape, and this is almost 2 inches. Unravel a little bit. Take your drumstick. Don't drop it. Line it up with the end. Try to get it as straight as you can. Okay, and then you're going to wrap it around. To keep wrapping it around and round. I'm sure I'll get faster at this as I go, until you get a nice thick base. How thick you want that to be is totally up to you. Keep in mind that the tape part of the base is not going to be how wide the base is going to be, or how wide the actual handle or head is going to be, because it's just a base. After you put the tape down as a base, then you'll take some other materials and add those materials to the handle or the head, which will make the actual finished product thicker. So keep that in mind when you're wrapping with your tape. So I am going to wrap this around. It's going to take me a minute, and then I'll be right back. Hello, I'm back. So I have this little bit of tape on there. Can you see that? So I have the other masking tape. Okay, and I think that okay, so I just unraveled some, and then I'm going to place it on the edge of this one. And basically you keep wrapping it and wrapping it and wrapping it, and I'm going to wrap it until it is level with this piece right here. All right, so as you can see, I have it relatively the same width as the other part of the tape, and I think I'm good with this length of a handle. I don't know, I think it's good. Next is to form a base for the head. So there are so many ways that you can do the head here. There's one guy who used silicone. There was another guy who used cotton flannel material, and there was another guy who used yarn. Both the cotton flannel and the yarn were placed on top of a tape base, and the silicone was just silicone. Again, those videos will all be placed in the description below, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use tape, and I'm going to use cotton flannel as well as vinyl tape. Now, there are different shapes that you can do for a hand drumstick. you can do a round shape, which is what I seen the man do for the silicone, but you can still form that shape with whatever material you use underneath. And then you can also use a shape that is similar to a handle where it's just kind of a flat head. I think I'm going to go for the flat shape, but make it slightly more rounded towards the top than you would see on the handle portion. Okay, so materials. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do the same thing that I did right here up on the top. I'm going to take my 2-inch masking tape and my 1-inch masking tape, and I'm going to put those towards the top. But when I use the other material to form the head, I'm going to use that material to make it slightly more rounded towards the top portion of the stick. For the width that I do when I add the tape, I think I'm just going to make it similar to this, but use more material on top of the base to make the head thicker and rounder. So besides the tape, what I'm using are some cotton flannel. This is kind of one of those steps where you can really use a wide range of items. These are actually receiving blankets, cotton flannel receiving blankets for my first child, who is he's gonna be 11 this year. So these are old, and I've just held on to these and made other items out of them here and there. So this is where hoarding comes to be a good thing. See, I've already cut it and used it before for other things. But these are going to be cut into strips, probably like an inch wide strips, and I'll make them nice and long. And those strips are going to be wrapped around the tape, and then I'll do multiple layers of that, securing each layer with some black vinyl tape. All right, so I have all the cotton strips cut. Come to think of it, I probably did not need to cut that whole blanket up because this is a lot of bulk of fabric for a drumstick. I don't think we need to add this much, but hey, if I ever need to make more in the future, then I already have this process done. So yeah, let's get to the next step. Okay, so the next step, before we can get on to forming the handle or the head anymore, is if you plan on decorating the middle dead space here, now is the time that you want to do that. Because I also got colorful vinyl tape. And there's multiple ways to decorate your drumstick. If you're doing something like using a wooden dowel like I am, you can just leave that negative space blank for a more natural look. Other ways of decorating your drumstick, obviously you've seen the beaded one that I had before. There's also thread work. So thread work, if you don't know what that is, we frequently see it on feather fans. I've done thread work on this channel before. I don't believe that I really showed you how to do it though. Come to think of it, I promised to do a thread work video and I completely forgot. Here I'm going to be using vinyl, and this is what I seen a few of the people use in the different drumstick making videos that I watched. And it's fairly simple. I guess the biggest struggle I'm going to have is getting it on there nice and straight, because it was kind of a struggle to get the masking tape on there nice and straight. In addition, you also have to be mindful about how you peel it off of the actual tape, because when you pull on it, It's a plastic, it's vinyl, so when you pull on it, you stretch it, so it can cause the tape to become warped instead of nice and straight and flat. And in some tapes, it doesn't appear to be happening with this one, but in some tapes it can stretch the tape, removing the color, turning the tape kind of like whitewashed. So again, like I said, I have vinyl tape for that portion. You can also use beadwork or thread work, and I have the colors white, yellow, red, and black. Those are medicine wheel colors. And then I also have blue for either side of that. With that being said, I'm going to dig out my measuring tape and also my pen, so I can find the middle. I know that I could just look for a 5 since it's a 10-inch thing, but I want to be sure. See, like the tape is actually 4 inches and 1/8 apart instead of, you know, something a little more definite. So I'm gonna find the middle of that, which is 2 inches and 1/8. Okay. Actually, it might be more like half of that 1/8. So right there. All right, so because I'm working with 4 colors inside of the blue, put 2 colors on one side of that middle mark point, and then the other 2 colors and put them on the other side of that middle mark point. Hopefully you can see my cats hanging out. And then I'm going to put blue on either side. I'm going to make sure that this is straight, and it isn't, so we're going to make it straight. Peel some up, be gentle, and then I'm going to cut off just and then I am going to cut this in half. Heads up, I ended up cutting it about 1/4 of its width instead of just half. Okay, so there's that. It's still a little bit imperfect. There's a space there. And I ended up cutting it a little thinner because just cutting it in half was a little too wide still. What I think I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put a second layer on top of that. And I'm going to do the layers with one color at a time instead of completing a full layer and then doing a second layer. Okay, so I have finished the little medicine wheel design in the middle, and now it's time to do the outside of it. So I'm going to set this black vinyl tape aside. We're going to use it again. As for the colorful tape, I'm going to put that away. We're not using that again. But before we do that, it's time to use the blue. So this way, you can actually spin onto the dowel all at once instead of having to do little strips one at a time. What I'm doing here is putting the bottom of the blue at the bottom of this black. I'm going to wrap it loosely all the way around, and then it meets up right there where the edge of my thumb is. So now what I'm going to do is, where's my pen? I'm going to mark that. And now what I'm going to do, since I lined up this corner right here with the black and then it met up right here, I am going to cut that off. I'm going to meet this corner to the mark that I made. Okay. Get rid of this. And now I'm going to line up this mark with the black. When we meet them up, it's going to slightly cover that point. And now we're going to roll the tape onto the stick. And it should be slightly overlapping. You see? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark where it starts. And I'm going to kind of guess. Sorry you can't see anything here, and I barely even explained it very well anyways, but all I did was I wrapped the blue tape around the base of the masking tape, similarly to how I did when I wrapped it around the black tape, and that's to see where it meets up at the point at which it met the masking tape, if that makes sense. And that's so I can cut it at a diagonal angle again. Probably about right here. And I have a mark there for my nail. And then I'm going to join this mark to this mark. And you can do this the other way around as well. You can start up here and then do the same thing but go down this way. I'm choosing to do up here because just because I wanted to line it up perfectly with the design, and I trusted myself more to start it there. So yeah, go ahead and press down, and then I'm going to repeat this exact thing on the other side. I'll see you back.
Hello.
All right, so the middle portion is all done now. Now, thankfully, I did both of these the same width, and really either or could be the handle or the head. It doesn't matter at this point, because when I did my design, I put it in an order where if I were to make this the handle and this the head, the white would be at the bottom. And if you don't mind that, then it's whatever, but I would kind of like the white to be at the top. So yeah, white on the top, black on the bottom. So this one is going to be the handle and this one is going to be the head. So what I'm going to do is get started on the handle first. And right now it's time to take those cotton strips and vinyl tape and wrap the strips around. So something that I want to note that worked out for me, and it might have been different for you. And again, this is why I always suggest watching my videos through all the way before following it, if you're following it as a tutorial. Because in order to have a nice flat, straight handle, my strips ended up being just wide enough where I can add 3 right next to each other, sort of like how I did the tape. I'm going to take one strip for now, grab some tape, tape it on. Doesn't have to be perfect at this point. And then I'm just going to wrap it around and around until I get sort of the desired width. Again, this is going to be covered with leather, so keep in mind that we still have another layer and you don't want it to be too thick. And I think right here is a good ending point. So I'm going to cut it, grab some more tape, and tape it down. All right, there's that. And now what I'm going to do is, yeah, I definitely cut way too much cotton strips because it didn't even take a full strip to do the handle. Like, I have some left over. It's all right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this vinyl tape, put the edge over top of these, line it up with the edge of the handle, press it down. I'm going to bring it across the bottom of the handle and then back towards the top. And now I'm going to repeat that a couple times, overlapping what I just laid down. I think I'm going to add one more go around just on the top. Just to really make sure that none of that comes off well. All right, so there is the handle. The last step for the handle, I'm not going to do it yet. I'm going to work on the head next. But the last step for the handle is to cut out the leather and sew the leather over top. And I am going to repeat what I did for the handle, but I'm going to do a little extra steps here. And I am going to wrap it around just a little less. Okay. I'm going to repeat that right next to it. So I have 3 strips right here, and I'm going to go ahead and do one of those one arounds, but I'm only going to do one. I'm not going to cover the whole thing. Okay, so this is the head so far. Now what I'm going to do is take the rest of that strip and I'm going to wrap it around the entire head all at once. So I'm going to start this. Let's do it like this, I guess. Okay. And then I'm going to wrap this around the entire head, but I'm going to try and focus most of the strip on the top portion so I can form kind of a rounded shape towards the top. And then I'm going to repeat the one around and one around to hold that on. All right, so as you can see, it's already kind of starting to take a shape where it's more rounded towards the top, but I am going to grab another strip and repeat exactly what I just did. So at this point, I think you could stop here if this is a thickness that you like for the head, but I think I still want it a little thicker. So I am going to repeat the same steps. Okay, so I think I've reached the point where I like the shape, the size, all that, where I like where I'm at with this head. I also went and tested it on my drum to see the sound that it makes, and it sounds good. So this is where I'm going to stop wrapping strips around the head. And we want to make sure that the wrapping is nice and secure. So I'm going to repeat what I did on the bottom and continue to wrap this vinyl tape around the head. All right, so here it is. If you just so happen to make your head wide enough that you can't get it completely covered, you don't want to overkill with the tape, so it's okay to have little gaps towards the top that aren't covered. This is really just to secure the cotton strips. Since they're wrapped around, you don't want them to move around too much. So yeah, we have all this done. The next step is which is the last step actually, is to add the leather to the handle and the head. Okay, so I took a quick break, but I'm back and I have my leather out here. So there's a suede side to this leather that I have, and there's also just the regular side of the leather. And you have a few different options to choose when it comes to leather, you know, like deer skin, whatever. There's also the thickness and I guess softness, I don't know. I am not being particular with what kind of leather I use for my drumstick. I'm just using what I have. And this is what I have. I believe this is deerskin. So what I need to do now is cut two pieces, one for the head and one for the handle. And basically what I'm doing for that is I am setting the stick on the leather, and then I'm going to sort of fold it onto the stick. Let's see, let's try it like this. And then I'm going to roll it until it meets, and that's, yeah, this is good. And this just kind of tells me how thick to cut the piece, but I'm not going to cut it to exact size just yet. I'm going to cut it just a little bit wider so I have extra to work with. Okay, so there's that. And then I'm going to mark how long to cut it. So the head of the stick ends here. I'm going to cut it just a little bit longer. Right, so basically I'm going to cut this piece right here. So again, I'm going to place it on, and I'm not going to worry about cutting the length yet. This is too long right here, but we're going to leave it for now and then cut it to size later on. But again, I'm going to roll it until it meets up. Where's my pen? And then I'm going to cut it just a little bit wider. I guess I'm going to square off this edge. Make it a little more straight. Wrapping it around the handle, you see where the half point is. What we need to do is cut these corners off so that it can fit around the handle. Take the piece, fold it in half, and then cut the corner off the fold. Oops, it just went flying. Okay, and then it looks like that. So I'm going to fold it in half again, and notice how I have the corner cut. I think that this part right here is fine, but I need to cut a little more off right here. So this part is really up to you. Like, it's really based on how thick you made your drumstick. So you can't do it the exact same like size that I did. But yeah, there. That fits a little better. So what I'm using and what I've seen everybody else use is sinew. I have artificial sinew. It'll also be very helpful to have a pair of pliers. Anytime that you sew with leather, really, you should have a pair of pliers. You should also have a thimble. I just have like a plastic one here. And of course, a needle. Some needles are better to use than others, like ones that are easy for leather work, or Glover needles, I think that they're called. I don't have needles like that, and I never remember to buy any, so I'm just using plain old needle. You want to make sure that for the entire handle you have one piece of sinew. So basically what I'm trying to say is you better make sure that it's long enough for you to sew the entire handle. Same thing for the head, and that's because you don't want to have to tie off and then start again. You run the risk of it coming undone or whatever. So, and then my sinew that I have is actually really thick, so I'm going to split it. And yeah, I'm gonna do that off camera. I'll be right back. Okay, so I have my sinew split so that it's just a little thinner. I have it threaded on the needle, and then I also tied a knot. Oops, right here. I also tied a knot. For the knot, you kind of want to do a little overkill on tying a bunch of knots. I think I tied 5 here, 4 or 5, I don't remember. And that's basically, you just want to make the knot really big so that there's just no chance of it passing through the hole. So we're gonna get started now on the sewing portion. So when you created this little divot right here, I'm going to drive the needle through the middle of that divot. Now there's a few different types of stitches that I've seen people use in these videos. What I'm going to be using is what's called a baseball stitch, and that's basically where you sew from the bottom as you go on each side. Okay, so I have most of the bottom portion sewn. As you can see, this is a baseball stitch, and now I've reached the point where I need to cut the other corner. Just pulling it as tightly on as you can. I'm going to move this so I can see. And then as you can see, this corner right here is excess. So I am going to cut that corner off. Okay, so one other thing before I can move on any further around the other side is I feel like I need to trim the excess on the one side before I can move on. So I have this part up against the handle, and it's just one side that I want to trim the excess off. So again, similar as before, you fold them until it meets up with the other one, and that's what we're going to cut off. Okay, so I have the bottom portion of the handle sewn, and it's time to work on the just straight stitch down, but I just wanted to check in and show you guys. So here it is. You can see the baseball stitch, and it's worked its way around for like rounded corners here. And it also helps to take your leather and make sure that you pull it nice and tightly against the handle. And I'm just going to sew all the way down until I get to here. I'll check back. Okay, so I've sort of reached the midpoint of sewing downwards. Now, one thing that I want to do is secure this leather in place. Over time, it can spin and become detached from what, you know, is beneath the leather. So I'm going to do what one of the people that I watched, one of their tutorials was called an anchor stitch. And that's basically taking the needle and diving it into the material underneath. Let me zoom in so you can see. Okay, so I have the needle and I'm poking it into the handle underneath the leather, and I'm going to maneuver it to bring it back up, and it might not. Okay, there we go. See how it's kind of close this back up. And I'm just going to do this one. I'm not going to do any more than that. But now I'm going to come back up on the other side just as I would on a regular baseball stitch. Okay. Now I've done the one anchor stitch. This leather should stay in place, and I'm going to continue back down with the baseball stitch. All right, so I have this much done now, and it's time to cut the excess off of the bottom. Leave probably about 1/4 inch of extra material so that when I sew it, it'll, you know, cover up. So if you made your handle wider, you might have to leave more on there extra. In my case, I take that back. I think I might do more than 1/4 inch. You know, just eyeball it, I guess. See how much you need to cover the base of the handle, and then add a little extra, and that's how much you should leave on. Okay, so I'm going to continue to baseball stitch all the way to the bottom of this. Now at this point you have a few different options. Before I continue to baseball stitch, I should have mentioned them, but you could have cut the corners off on either side just like we did on the top, and then sort of form fitted the leather to the handle, and then wrapped sinew or thread or whatever around it several times. But I'm not doing that. I'm going to do what one of the creators that I watched, I believe he called it a flower stitch or a lattice, or I can't remember exactly. But basically, let's see, probably like 1/4 inch away from the last time you came up, around there, he went down into the leather, and then that's about that same distance away, he came back up, and then repeated that process all the way around until he got back to where he started. So that's what I'm gonna do. All right, so I've made it all the way back around. Okay, and now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to pull tightly. Don't pull too tight that you break the thread, but you want to pull nice and tight so that you make sure that all the stitches are being pulled super tight. Now that I have it nice and tight, I am going to go ahead and drive it in and have the needle come out in between the edges of the leather, like right where that baseball stitch is, except that's not happening. Come on. There we go. this is where I'm going to tie it off. Okay, I've tied it, and now I am going to drive the thread back in, bring it up, I don't know, anywhere else really, and then just cut it. All right. Hopefully that'll go back in. Come on, get back in there. Whatever, it'll get back in there. Now you can't see where the thread is. And here is the handle. I did make a little mistake when I did the anchor stitch, which is right here. I forgot to make sure I had it really pulled tight before doing the anchor stitch. So there's a little bit of extra leather down here, but that's okay. It doesn't seem to bother me, and it's just a handle. It's just a handle. All right, so let's get started on the head. All right, so I have the leather piece for the head, and it's really going to be the same process that we did before, but the head's a little more rounded. I'm going to take this and sort of straighten that top. I'm going to save both of us some time here and just say that I did the same steps for the head as I did for the handle, except for one step, which I'm going to talk about in the next clip. All right, bye. Okay, I lied. Just a really quick point I want to make is that when you trim off the one side for this, you're probably going to end up trimming off more towards the bottom. For the handle, we just cut a straight line all the way down, right? But the handle is straight. The head is wider at the top than it is at the bottom. Therefore, you're not going to cut straight down on the edge of the leather. You're going to sort of taper. I don't know if it's called taper, but you're going to cut more off on the bottom because you need less leather on the bottom. So yeah, now I'm going to go and sew and catch up back with you. Okay, so here is my mess. And here is my drumstick. So this is the finished product. It does have a little bit of I don't know what you would call this right here, and I think this might have been caused for me cutting that indentation too low. I shouldn't have cut it so deep, then it wouldn't have created sort of an extra bubble right here, but for the most part. And it has a pretty good sound. So yeah, that is the Vlogtorial of my drumstick for a hand drum. I hope you liked it. I hope it was helpful or entertaining or whatever you want it to be. Other video links will be in the description box, as well as a list of all the materials that I used. And I hope you all have a good day, week, month, whatever you want it to be. I'll see you on the next one. Bama Pequodman.